it's not quite streaming yet. It's preparing. As soon as it is, I'll let you know.
The screen's telling me that we're live on YouTube.
You're live streaming.
Brilliant. Thanks, Judy. And look, it's just hit 5:30, so good afternoon, everyone. It's reached our appointed starting time. So I will declare 31st of January 2022 meeting of the City of Adelaide Council Assessment Panel open. Hello, my name is Nathan Cunningham. I am the independent presiding member of the panel, and I'd like to welcome other panel members, staff, applicants, representatives, and a broader gallery to this meeting, which is a full online meeting. And so some of the participants and observers are online via the live stream, which is on YouTube. So to commence, whilst we're online from various locations, the meeting's being hosted at the Adelaide Town Hall and Civic Centre. Therefore, the City of Adelaide Council Assessment Panel acknowledges that we're meeting on traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pays respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations who are present today. So welcome. Before we move into the development applications and the published agenda that is before us tonight, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping and some introductions. Also for the gallery and any broader participants, I'll outline a little bit about the role of CAP. I've got some meeting procedures to go through. Some of those I'll go through at the start, but some of those relate to a public hearing, which I'll go through when we get to the public hearing part of the agenda. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge that this is technically the first meeting of a new makeup of the panel, so we will be finding our feet a little bit in our communications and decision making tonight. But every 2 years, City of Adelaide goes through a process of evaluating and updating its membership based on expressions of interest and any desired skills balance across the panel. So I take this opportunity, I guess, firstly to welcome the new members of the panel, and I guess that's myself included, but also to thank the City of Adelaide for putting their faith in myself and others to perform this important task for the city. Now I'm just going to welcome the panel members that we've got with us tonight. We have 3 independent panel members as well as 1 council elected member. We have Deputy Lord Mayor Councillor Armin Abrahimzadeh is our council elected member. Welcome. We also have our 3 independent members, Mark Adcock, Colleen Dunn, and Emily Nankiville. So welcome to you all. Thanks for waving to me on the screen. It's lovely. We also have a deputy independent member, Professor Mads Garbo. He is available to stand in for absentees and to assist the panel with its decision making. However, he's not required tonight as we have a full complement. We've also got a number of key staff who are with us, and they'll pop up from time to time, or their names will sit on screen. But essentially they're here to assist the panel with the operations of the meeting. So with us, we've got Helen Dan, who is the assessment manager, Seb Gross, the team leader of development assessment, Edward Poole, who is the senior planner from the development assessment team and the author of the application report with us tonight, and Judy Speck, who is our governance officer and helping to ensure that we stick to task. I'd normally provide some housekeeping if we were all in the one environment. However, we're all in separate locations. I'll skip through that, but I just wanted to touch on the usage of Zoom, which is a really valuable tool, but it's really only successful when one person is speaking at a time. I'm sure that won't be a problem, but if we can keep our microphones muted unless we wanted to speak for the majority of time, that's great. That helps to minimise any background noise, and I see a lot of muted microphones on my screen now. Also, as you can see at the moment, we're utilising the shared screen functionality of Zoom. which is a really useful and important tool. What that does is it allows us to essentially provide live minutes to anybody watching or observing in the online environment. What it also means, though, is I may not be able to see the panel members. So if you're waving to me to try and interject, I may not be able to see you. So you can unmute your microphones and just say, excuse me, or butt in if you need to do so at any time. If it looks like I'm avoiding you, it's not because that's happening, it's because I cannot see you. Now, decision-making can be challenging with a shared screen. So what the staff are planning on doing is minimising the shared screen when we get to the recommendations tonight. That allows me to see everybody so that we can vote visually with a hands up arrangement. If I can't see you, however, I'll let you know and I'll ask you, are you in favour or opposed to whatever motion is before us? So but hopefully that will all make more sense as we start to go through it, but I just wanted to outline that at the start. So just for any gallery who may be observing and don't really know what a council assessment panel is, it may be the first time you've observed one of these meetings. So I'll just explain very briefly what we are and what we're here to do. A council assessment panel, or a CAP, is a body of generally independent experts across various fields, together with a council elected member, appointed by the council to perform development assessment function for the council, generally on the more complex development applications received, but always those that have had public and community involvement. We're required to perform that planning assessment against relevant provisions of council's development plan or against the state's planning and design code, depending on when those applications were lodged. Those documents that are referred to are essentially the planning book of rules for the city, for want of a better term. As I said before, I've got some other meeting procedures to deal with when we get to the public hearing component of the agenda, but that's at item 5. And we haven't even reached item 1 yet. So I'll get into the published agenda, which is sat on the website for a few days now. And that starts with confirmation of minutes. So the last meeting was held, it was a slightly different makeup of the panel, but the last meeting was held on the 15th of November 2021. Firstly, panel members, does anyone have any matters from those minutes that they wish to raise? If so, just unmute your microphones and jump in. If not, is someone prepared to move that they are taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of proceedings?
Nathan, I'll propose that.
Thank you, Colleen. Moved by Colleen. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'm happy to second, Nathan.
No worries. Thanks, Emily, for seconding. And just wanted, before I put that to a vote, something that sometimes feels like an anomaly, even if panel members were not in attendance at that previous meeting, they are obliged to vote on this. So I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? I can see every hand, which is brilliant. There are nil opposed, so they will be taken as a true and correct record and endorsed accordingly. Moving on to item 2, which is reports to the CAP. We have an item under 2.1 in relation to delegations and adoption of meeting procedures, as well as our meeting schedule. That's on page 3 of the published agenda. So firstly, I guess panel members, does anyone have any questions in relation to this report? What I might also do is I might get potentially the assessment manager just to run us through, for absolute clarity, the key changes. I note that the changes are in either highlight or red text, but just perhaps a little explanation as to the reason behind some of the changes or what they were before. That might be really useful for us. So if Helen, are you well placed to provide that information?
I can, thank you, Nathan. So what was published had a couple of, or 2 fairly minor typo errors. It actually says in the red there that it was the deletion of the word that, but it was actually the deletion of the word the and inclusion of the word to after the word subject in 1.1. So just so it reads subject to clause 1.2. The next one was the deletion of the word "is" after the word "attendance," and really this is just so it really makes sense. And then the last amendment is around looking at seriously at variance, and at the published agenda it talked about development plan, but it didn't talk about planning rules, which covers off on the planning design code. So we just put that in as an inclusion.
Thanks, Helen. Did any panel members have any further questions to explore that? Can't see all members, but if anyone wants to chime in, they can. If not, we have a recommendation which covers those delegations, meeting procedures and meeting schedule. Is anyone prepared to move that recommendation?
Yeah, happy to move, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, mover. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'm happy to.
We both will second.
No worries, thanks. I think, Colleen, I saw your microphone switch on first, so we've got a mover and a seconder, so that's on the floor. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? I can't see CAP member Mark. I can see you, Mark. Perfect. We have a unanimous vote there, so that is carried. Thank you all. Which moves us on to item 3, which is declarations of conflict of interest. Ahead of the meeting, all members have the opportunity to advise myself and/or the assessment manager of any conflicts of interest in any matters on tonight's agenda. Ahead of the meeting, we've received no advice of any conflicts of interest. However, the opportunity exists now. If any panel members realise they have a conflict of interest that they wish to raise, if so, turn your microphone on and let me know. Any conflicts of interest? A lot of head shaking and no microphones coming on, which is good. So there will be no conflicts of interest recorded. Oh, Helen, you've got your hand up, yes?
Not for a conflict, Nathan. I just wanted to advise that Edward Poole would like to just address an error in the report, so it's clear before the representatives and the applicants speak to the application.
Okay, very good. So before we get to the public hearing?
Yeah, just a point of clarification on street numbering for one of the representatives. Ed,
Okay.
if you'd like to just explain, please.
Thank you, Helen. Hope everyone can hear me clearly. Yes, with regards to the report for 5.1 for Brougham Court, there are unfortunately 3 errors with regards to the numbering. Firstly, on page, I should explain the numbering of 18 Brougham Court, which has been incorrectly referenced as 24 Brougham Court. Essentially, there we are. Essentially, on the first page, which is page 47, there is an error. Person speaking before the panel, Mr. Gershwitz, has been his address has been incorrectly referred to as being number 24. He is in fact at number 18, which is the property to the south. Again, on the next page, page 48. Paragraph 2.3, members would like to look at that. Once again, the error there is, it refers to number 24, Brougham Court. That should again read 18. And lastly, on page 64, in the detailed discussion, members will see at the bottom of the page, under the paragraph daylight and sunlight, at the very bottom of the page, there's a reference to the occupants of 24 Brougham Court. That should read 18 Brougham Court. So apologies, members, for that error. So that is hopefully clear. The property in question to the south is number 18. Thank you.
Thanks, Edward. I see a lot of head nodding, which means I think that it's pretty clear to panel members. So thanks for that clarification. And we're almost at item 5 now, but before we get there, I'll just, item 4 of the published agenda talks about applications under the Development Act with representations, but we have none of those. So we do move on to item 5, which is applications under the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act with representation. So we've got one item tonight, which is the one that Edward was just talking about, at 22 Brougham Court, North Adelaide, which is a variation to an application from 2020, proposing alterations to the previous approved additions, including internal wall changes and additional upper living spaces. This is in the city living zone, and it is assessed, performance assessed against the Planning and Design Code. There's a recommendation in the published agenda for refusal, but what I wanted to do just before I see a whole lot of people that are now in the meeting, so I'll just quickly explain what the public hearing process is all about, and that applies to the names that we've got on screen there, because I'll be calling you in a moment. So now that we've reached that point, I have a list of names that are on screen, so I'll be reading those out in the order that they're provided to me, as these were the people that indicated a desire to be heard by the panel. When I call your name, you can then unmute your microphone, or I think we've got control of microphones, so we may be doing that for you. At that point, you'll be given 5 minutes to present to the panel. Please bear in mind that all panel members have received copies of your written representations, so we encourage you to use the time to really flesh out the key issues that you want the panel members to consider as part of their decision making. As I mentioned at the outset, we're obliged to perform a planning assessment against the planning rules. So to give most effect to your presentation, it's best to refer to planning language as best you can, because that is what we are obliged to make our decisions on. As I said, you've got 5 minutes per speaker. I'll be keeping an eye on the clock. I'll try and give you a 1-minute warning at 4 minutes, and at 5 minutes, I'll wrap you up in line with our standard meeting procedures. We don't want this process to be too daunting. We recognise that this is something that may be uncommon for you. It can feel particularly formal. We don't want it to be daunting or overwhelming. Everyone's got a role to play. We've got a role to play, and so do you. And if you give the panel your key issues throughout your 5 minutes that you want us to consider as part of the decision making, then you've played your role, and that's really important for the decision making process. At the conclusion of your presentation, I'll check if any panel members have got questions of you. This is not a forum for you to ask questions of the panel, however. So I'll go through that process, and then we move on to the next speaker until we conclude all the speakers. Once we've finished with the speakers, that essentially concludes the public hearing component, and we move on to the panel discussing and forming a decision. For each item tonight, and we only have the one, we've got options for decisions. We can approve, we can refuse, or we can defer our decisions. And once a decision is reached, I'll just pause for a moment to make it really clear to those who have participated and those who are observing what that decision was. And if any if any members of the gallery or any applicants or representatives had any questions at that point, they'll need to be held over and had discussions with the staff as of business hours tomorrow. So again, hopefully that's clear, but it generally becomes clearer as we go through it. So the first representative that I have listed, do we have Matthew and Katie Gershwitz with us? If so, you just have your microphones activated.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. That sounds like Matthew.
Yes, it is.
Brilliant. So you've got 5 minutes to present to us
Thank you.
of the issues that you see with the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So good evening. My name is Matthew Gershwitz and I reside at number 18 Brougham Court with my wife and 2 sons. We've lived here for 30 plus years and are located next door to the applicant's property on their south side where we share a boundary. We've always had concerns over this development, which significantly reduces the amenity and private enjoyment of our property with family and friends in our backyard and rear family room being our principal living areas. The proposal impacts us with firstly height, bulk and setback. Excessive height of the second story addition built on the boundaries of a size, scale and location which results in visual dominance when viewed from our rear family room and backyard. In addition, there's no setback which is required to provide access to natural light. And secondly, overlooking in privacy, the new balcony door and additional family room attic windows facing into our property enables overlooking into our main living, family and private outdoor spaces. We note the applicants have ignored Council's development assessment advice in relation to the proposed plans, ignored our representation concerns in relation to height, bulk, setback and overlooking in privacy, and have ignored aspects of the planning and design code, which provides a framework for a fair playing field for everyone. We're seeking your input and consideration to resolve our significant concerns. I'll now discuss an overview of each of our two main concerns. So firstly, height, bulk and setback. Our property is downhill from applicants on a slope, creating a sense of enclosure with the size of the addition. The excessive scale of the second story addition on our north boundary significantly impacts the use and enjoyment of our property with a total of 7.35 metres. When looking up, it has continued to grow in height and scale, as it is now 0.3 metres higher than the previous proposal. In addition, our property will be impacted by reduction in natural light into both our family room and backyard due to the proposed two-story extension on the boundary, and this impacts our enjoyment of our principal areas of entertaining for family and friends. The number of performance codes that provide guidance on these issues, land use and intensity, PO 2.8, building setbacks from side boundaries to be set back to reduce impacts on building and adjoining properties, provide adequate direct sun and ventilation to building and open spaces, minimise extent of overlooking and loss of privacy, and minimise extent on overshadowing. Building setbacks, P3, PO 3.3, dwelling setbacks from side boundaries provide separation between dwellings in a way that complements the established character and access to natural light and ventilation for neighbours. City living DTS DPF 3.3, building walls are set back from a side boundary not less than the nearest side setback of the primary building on the adjoining allotment. So for 18 Brown Court, it is 1,200 millimetres, 1.2 metres between us and our neighbour at 14 Brown Court on our southern boundary. Building walls are set back from side boundaries for a wall facing a southern boundary at least 1.9 metres, plus a third of the wall height above 3 metres measured from the top of the footings. BO 7.1, building setbacks from side boundaries provide separation between dwellings, access to natural light and ventilation. And 10.2, development of more than one building height in areas takes into account its height and bulk in relation to adjoining dwellings by incorporating stepping in the design in accordance with the slope of the land. So in a similar proposal by the applicants approved by Council 6 years ago, it was Council who assisted on our behalf that the second story be set back 1.9 metres from the boundary, thereby reducing the impact of height, bulk and loss of sunlight to our property. The setback was to assist increasing the volume of natural light into our rear yard and family room. That setback is not reflected in the current plans, but the principle of the 1.9 setback from the south boundary is referred to at many places throughout the code. So in summary, due to the height, impact, bulk and scale creating a visual dominance in addition to loss of natural light, we request Council to ensure the minimum 1.9 metre setback from the boundary of the second story is reflected in the current plans in accordance with the code. Second issue relates to overlooking and privacy. We have a number of concerns regarding privacy and overlooking, which impacts our private use and enjoyment of our principal areas for living. And there are a number of performance codes that provide guidance. So if I go to all residential development, dwellings, additions, overlooking privacy, 10.1, development mitigates direct overlooking from upper level side or rear facing windows to habitable rooms and private open spaces of adjoining residential properties. 10.2, development mitigates direct overlooking from balconies to habitable rooms and private open space.
Matthew, you've got about another minute.
Okay, thank you. So we have a number of privacy concerns as follows. So on the southern elevation, which is on page 113 and 114 of the meeting papers, there's a balcony and a door to the outside. Page 113 indicates it's clearly a landing balcony with stairs to ground level. Page 114 indicates the balcony and door clearly set well above the ground level and above the proposed 2-metre fence. It looks directly into our private rear yard, our rear family room and main bedroom. We have included the photo at 3.5 on page 51, which shows we have deciduous trees planted in that location to enable shade in summer and light throughout winter. But there'll be no privacy during the autumn winter months as the balcony landing sits above the fence. We request the council ensure a privacy treatment to the window to a minimum of 1.7 above finished floor level in accordance with the code is provided. In addition, there are 3 attic windows for a family room in the attic space with sill heights of 0.6 millimetres above finished floor level. Again, we are requesting that they do not look down into our rear family room and that a proper privacy treatment be applied. So all we're asking for is, to the loss of impact on privacy, council consider a treatment to those particular items, so windows, the balcony windows, to ensure our privacy. Due to our significant concerns, we believe the proposal should not be approved. So I'll hand back to the chair. So the above significant concerns in relation to the detrimental impact that the proposed development has on our property relating to height, bulk, setback, and 2, overlooking privacy can now be discussed and resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. That's well made. I'll just check. Do any panel members have any questions of the representative? If not, Emily, you weren't saying. Yes,
mine might be a question to staff, and I'm happy to ask it at the end. I might be lost, but I can't see a balcony on the plan, but I just wanted to, I guess, clarify which windows were of concern.
Can I answer that?
Yes, you can.
Yes, I can. Okay.
Thank you.
So if we go to on the meeting papers, if we go to page 113, which shows the south elevation marked as A03. There's a balcony at the side coming out. It's clearly a balcony. It's on the plans there. So on the left-hand side, you can see out the side, there's a little door and a balcony with steps down to ground level. If you refer to the next page, 114 of your meeting papers, in the middle section there, it shows a south elevation. And you can see bang on in the middle there, sitting above the proposed 2-metre fence, there's now a doorway that comes out. That's the balcony door that comes out, where people will be standing through that balcony door on that landing down to access their ground level. That actually sits directly opposite our rear family room. And the photo that sits on page 51 of your meeting papers, there's a photo 3.5 on page 51, which gives you a perspective from inside our rear family room. And you can see at the end there, that bottom photo 3.5, we look out there, we have a deciduous trees deliberately to allow us shade in summer and provide light, northern light and warmth during the winter. When those leaves go, that's where that's pretty much where that door, that balcony above the fence line will look directly into our principal living area. We would spend 90% of our time in that rear room as a family and with friends entertaining.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's clarified that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark, do you have a question?
Thank Thank you, Nathan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, all good.
Good. Yes, just a quick question to Matthew, although you've probably answered it in another way, but there is an existing approval, and I was wondering what particular aspects of this development versus the existing approval that are different that concern you. But I think you've probably referred to the overlooking issue, which I don't think was such an issue in the previous application.
That's correct. The previous application, the attic windows are new. This doorway has been moved to a new location, this balcony landing doorway. And we still have an issue with setback, which I believe we're entitled to, but we were not given in the last time around, but which we were originally provided in the first time. So there's been several iterations of this. The first time we had a 1.86 metre setback of the second story from our boundary. The second time we didn't get that for some reason, and this time I'm really asking, saying there's ample principles throughout the planning and design code, which refer to setback in these situations. And in our particular situation, because we've got such a sheer, it's a 2-story plus our backyard drops probably about 700 metres. So you're almost 3 metres looking straight up. It's a sheer cliff. And we have absolutely no relief in terms of the bulk and scale, but in particular, allowing sunlight and ventilation through to our rear yard and our family room. When that's built in our family room, it'll block quite a lot of sunlight coming through. So they're particular issues for us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Matthew.
Any further questions of the representative? If not, I thank you for your representation, Matthew, and we'll move on to our next speaker. I understand we have Ian Bagg representing Joe Daldig. Ian, are you with us?
Yes, here I am.
Hi, Ian. 5 minutes, over to you.
Just before I start, could I ask a question? Because I was informed by the council that the DA 210 of 2020 had expired and this was a new application. Is that not the case?
I could possibly confirm, given it's a 2020 application, that it's not expired. The report did talk about a previous approval prior to that, but it may be something that the staff, once we get into the discussion with the staff after you, we'll see if we can get clarification on that. But for the purposes of your presentation, I think it's fair to go with the 2020 application is approved, and this is a variation seeking a separate approval.
Good, thank you. So should I start?
Yes, over to you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually here representing Mrs. Joan Daldig, who is the owner of 24 Brougham Court, which is the property to the north of this one. However, I am familiar with all three premises, numbers 18, 22 and 24, as I live on the opposite side of the road facing both 18 and 22. Just a comment, if I seem to be looking sideways, it's not because I'm sly, it's because I'm reading some notes. Now, I acknowledge that the owners of number 22 have both the right to develop their property and the need, given that currently a family of 5 is living in a 4-room house. There is a point I would like to pick up based on the comment to one of our representations, where we said that the extension will reduce available sunlight. And the developer's response was, quote, "The setback on the northern boundary will not impact the natural light or ventilation to 24 Brougham Court, given that the wall is to be located on the southern boundary of 24 Brougham Court," close quote. That's incorrect on both counts. Brougham Court does not run north-south. It's skewed 15 degrees to the west of north. So for 4 or 5 months of the year, the sun rises over the southern boundary to an extent of our property and remains there for several hours. So the 6.2 metre building on our boundary would indeed reduce our light. And similarly, the prevailing breezes through much of the year come from the west and the southwest. So the proposed building would also significantly impact our ventilation. The solid concrete north-facing wall on the boundary will act as a heat sink and significantly increase the temperatures in our private open space. This, coupled with the reduced ventilation, will make our private open space very uncomfortable for much of the summer. As has been pointed out, this is the third in a series of development applications. Each time the space has increased, but so too has a detriment to us. Also, each time the number of unsatisfied policy objectives seems to have increased. For example, in the earlier application, the wall on our boundary, and this would apparently be the approved application, between the back of the existing house at 22 and the addition across the back was 3.3 metres height, which is close to the permitted height under City Living Zone DPF 3.3. This proposal doubles or virtually doubles that height to 6.2 metres. And that is certainly in breach of that DPF 3.3, and size and bulk is much increased, which puts it in violation of DPF, City Living Zone DPF 3.5. So it's my contention that the design's gone just a bit too far. Detriment to the neighbours is unacceptable. I believe a design is possible which would satisfy most of the owner's needs, but have a lesser impact on neighbouring properties. And in our case, we would much prefer the 3.3 metre. Well, we don't particularly welcome a 3.3 metre on the high wall on the boundary, but being practical, we would much prefer that to the 6.2 metres that is being proposed. So I agree with the council's recommendation that the development application should be rejected, or at least they should be asked to modify it and come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Excellent. I'll just check whether any panel members have any questions for you. Members, do you have any questions of the representative? No, there are none. So thank you, Ian. You can continue to observe and we'll move on to the next speaker.
Thank you.
In response, I understand we have the applicants, Philip Gertner and Cassandra Hunter, and also Kim Kelso, who may be supporting their response tonight. Are you with us?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, you've got 5 minutes to respond to what you've heard tonight and put forward any other matters on this DA. Over to you.
Good evening, presiding member and panel members. Thank you for your time to hear from us this evening. My name is Cassie and I'm here with Phil. Together we are the owners and residents, along with our 3 children, of 22 Brougham Court, North Adelaide. Kim from Design, who we are partnering with for our build, is also joining us for the meeting this evening. As you would be aware, our development application to construct a 2-storey addition to the rear of our home came before the panel and was approved in 2020. A site visit was also conducted by panel members at the time. Since then, we are very happy to say that we have welcomed a new little baby to our family. Our new little arrival prompted us to revisit our development to accommodate our growing family. Hence, here we are with some slight amendments to our previous approved plans. We have established our and our children's lives in North Adelaide over the past 9 years. Our little ones attend school locally and have many friends in the area. We utilise local amenities daily for shopping, dining, beauty services, socialising and fitness. As you would appreciate, creating our family home to accommodate us into the future in an area in which we are firmly established is greatly important to us. We feel the design and layout of our current plans makes far better and clever use of our available space and works much more in line with how we live as a family, whilst only resulting in very minor changes to the exterior of the already approved build. Especially in current times and as our children grow, the need for additional home space for the likes of working from home, homeschooling, and general living is paramount. We have taken on board comment from our previous panel visit around light to the lower living space. We have addressed this by including an alcove to the northern boundary wall. This allows for the inclusion of a skylight to the lower living area and significantly breaks the continuum of the wall. We are also excavating into our land and using a flat roof design to ensure the finished height of the build is no higher than that previously approved, being the height of our current roof pitch. All windows and doors will be appropriately positioned and treated to adhere with required privacy principles. Our proposed development is within required overshadowing and natural light requirements. Given such minor changes, we strongly feel that the amendments will not have any negative or greater impact on neighbouring properties as per the already approved plans. We have worked closely with our builders to develop a home design which is considerate of heritage, neighbouring properties and in alignment with planning requirements. The aim of our proposed development is not to cause any unrest amongst our neighbouring property owners, which can be seen through the considered design and positioning of our proposed build, but to merely create our family home. We are morally comfortable within ourselves that our proposed development is more than reasonable and will not impact on our neighbouring owners' enjoyment of their property. We highlight that there are many examples of 2- and 3-storey developments to boundary within North Adelaide, including that which sits on our rear boundary. A short walk of our neighbourhood sees several examples of this. We trust that you have read our written submissions, therefore will not relay all of this information again. However, I'm more than happy to answer any queries you may have. We respectfully request your favourable assessment of our development application. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassandra. Appreciate that. Now let me just check. Panel members, do you have any questions of the applicant? Colleen, far away.
Nathan, I wonder if you could perhaps, the applicant or Kim could just talk us through. Mr. Gershwitz believes that the height of the upper floor is now 300 millimetres taller than before, but I think the drawings demonstrate that it is the same height as the previous application and that it's been dropped down. It's just that it's not necessarily obvious to viewers of the drawing, and perhaps if you could just explain that I'm reading it correctly.
Kim, I wonder whether you're in a position to provide that detail.
Oh, I'm happy to jump in.
Yep, go for it.
Yep. We are excavating further down into the land. So the finished height of the build will be no higher than what was previously approved. So in line with our existing home's roof pitch.
And the next question, your back door that apparently looks into Mr. Gershwitz's living space, is that a solid door or is it a glass door, or what did you plan for that?
So we were planning, sorry, I'll just jump into that one. No, we were looking at doing something with a frosted finish, like a glass door, to let obviously natural light in, but obviously being aware of privacy, we want that privacy too. So that door will definitely be finished and frosted to whatever requirements required to make it satisfactory, basically.
And the last question is the attic space, which has got the 3 roof lights. I presume that's a fairly confined space. We've got a cross section through it, but not a lateral one. And how high are those skylights off the floor level?
That one I will have to defer to Kim. So hopefully she has that on hand with the plans.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now. They're actually in the roof, so they're not going to be on a a vertical wall. And looking at the measurements, they're about 1900 from the ground level of that room.
You're on mute for that last comment, Colleen.
To the bottom sill.
Yes, the bottom sill is 1920. I think there is a measurement on the plans.
And I presume it's a Velux or something. Are they operable?
Yep, yeah, for light and ventilation.
Yeah. So you need to be fairly able to poke your head through if you wanted to look out of them. So
absolutely, you're going to be looking at sky.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
Any questions from any other panel members? No?
Yeah, sorry, I just had one quick question. Sorry, I'm really struggling with my mute and unmute. I'm getting there. Just in relation to the bed one, I think that's the upper level, the bed one window that sort of will look sort of down the driveway. I just wanted to clarify what is proposed in terms of the treatments on that window. Will it be is it proposed to be sort of unobscured glass, or would there be any sort of treatment on that window?
Yep, I can grab that one as well. Of course, we want that to be the privacy requirements again to that. So whatever the requirement is, I believe it's 1.7 from memory or 1.8, that's what it will be. Except the top half of the window, the top quarter, that we'd like to have openable again to let fresh air come into the room. But obviously we do want some privacy in our bedroom as well.
Yeah, I do think they're proposed to have like a possibly like an awning opening, which is from what's here. I just wasn't sure what the actual finish in the window was. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question of Kim, please?
Unfortunately, no. Our meeting procedures don't allow questions across.
Okay, it was just for clarification on that finished floor level in the attic. 1.9 isn't in that room, that's in the bedroom. The attic space, Kim, can you just confirm what that is?
I'll allow clarification, Kim, if you've got the answer.
Thank you. So I had it at 0.6. Yeah, this is the 3 attic windows in that family room in the attic, not the bedroom adjoining it.
Kim, do you think you've got that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just grabbing the plans, working off of the mouse.
I might just jump in here, Ms. Cassie, just with respect to those windows, if they do require any sort of obscuring to a degree, you know, obviously we will do that. Like we said, in accordance with any sort of privacy requirements there. But yeah, but with the angle of the roof, you know, as Kim mentioned, they will be looking up.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's hard to actually tell exactly because of the position of them. So there's not actually a vertical measurement.
Would be something that as a panel, if we were going down an approval line, we could condition a minimum, we could condition a treatment. So I'm happy to move us past that, that matter. Were there any other questions of the applicant? See a lot of heads shaking as no, so we've concluded the Q&A. So that essentially closes the public hearing component. And now we move into the panel discussing and reaching a decision. So thank you, representatives and applicants, for your involvement. You obviously can continue to observe. I normally like to start with questions of staff. We may have some that might require Edward to turn his microphone on, I think, for some clarification around the plan details, just assuming based on what we've just heard. But do any panel members have any questions of staff? If not, what I might ask, and I think member Mark Adcock brought this up, there's an existing approval, and it's a little unclear as to exactly what has been varied. And I'm just wondering, Edward, whether you can talk us through, because I note that there's this northern boundary skylight void that's been proposed. I note that we've gone from a 1.86 metre setback to a 0 setback on the southern elevation. But are you able to just sort of dot point out the key changes? Just
okay.
What's already approved. Thanks, Edward.
Okay, thank you, Presiding Member. Perhaps I'll just start off by clarifying a point raised by Ian Bagg with regards to the validity of the previous approval. I did make a mistake, I think, in chatting to Mr. Bagg this morning. Under the provisions of the code with regards to COVID, as you'd know, there was an extension essentially of the operative consent for valid approvals, which stretched out the consent period from 12 months to 24 months. Hence, the previous approval, DA 210 of 2020, is still valid. So that is, I guess, the benchmark to which I'll be talking about here with regards to the changes. So I'll begin with regards to just itemising broadly the changes between this current application and the previous one. If I could just talk perhaps to the broader changes internally, and that is previously there was a plunge pool located centrally within the private rear open space, and that's been removed. Now that's now occupied more by the kitchen area and by bedroom 4 above. That has little impact or to no impact external to the site. There has been internal reorganisation within, change of moving of the dining and kitchen area from what was the back of the original dwelling into now that new addition. As mentioned previously by the applicant, a light well has been added to the northern boundary to provide some much needed light into that deep corner area of the living area near the dining space. The main change really has been a relocation of the stairs. Previously, it was located within the new addition itself. Now what we have is essentially a 2-storey, I guess, link along the northern boundary. So the most important thing to note here is the building still retains a building on the rear boundary as before. The extent of built form on the southern boundary to 18 Brougham Court is essentially identical in height, plus 300 mils, I think, in my calculations. But in terms of its height and its extent, it is, and materiality, it's the same. The biggest change has been on the northern boundary, where previously we had a single-storey link between the existing dwelling and the rear addition. The single-storey link was made up of red brick, and it extended a distance of 4.5 metres before the rear 2-storey addition. Now we have a 2-storey wall along that entire boundary. And lastly, we have a slight change to the roof form of the local heritage place, where before it was a hipped form, it now becomes a gable end, and that provides the additional space within which the attic sits within. So that's a roundup of the changes, Presiding Member.
Thanks, Edward. Any further questions of staff? If not, who wants to lead off discussions on the merits or otherwise of this one?
Sorry, Presiding Member. Mark Adcock does have a question.
Yes, Mark, sorry.
Sorry, Nathan, I was trying to...
No, sorry, I'd lost your face on screen, so no, far away.
I couldn't find my unmute switch. Edward, can you just clarify what you calculated as private open space? What area of the site? What part of the site came into that calculation?
Okay. Thank you, Mark. The area calculated as part of the private open space is essentially, I believe this is drawing number, we can refer to drawing number A01, which is the site plan. That shows the paved outdoor entertaining space at the rear, extending all the way up to and including the up to basically the gate area, which provides the sorry, not the gate area, but the landscaped edge of the landscaped area where the plants are located. So where on the notated drawings it says provide semi-mature screening plants, that location marks the extent of the private open space.
And sorry, I know it's in the report, but what was that figure again of private open space?
Oh, I'd have to bear with me.
Yeah, sorry.
Refer to the report. If members just bear with me for one moment.
I think that was 38 square metres, private open space.
38. So,
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that area that you've described, Adelaide, it comes out to 38 square metres.
I would have to go refer back. I believe it does.
Perhaps if you could have a little look at it and come back to us at some stage.
yeah,
Sure.
by all means, chime back in when you've got it, Edward.
Before we conclude. Yep.
Fine.
Thank you. Sorry to throw that one.
All good. Juggling my screens here as well. Okay, while Edward's looking at that, who wants to talk us through their thoughts on it? See any microphones firing up for me?
I'm happy to share
Yeah, thanks, Emily.
thoughts on it. I actually pulled out the old agenda and had a look at the plans just earlier today, so I could get a bit of an idea to the extent that I guess in my view is we can only really assess what forms part of the variation. I acknowledge the concerns of the representers, and to the extent that there is already 2-storey walls proposed on the boundaries, all 3 boundaries, the general built form, in my view, is already approved. And I acknowledge that there will be this additional wall height on the northern or the northern boundary. I probably got that wrong, but on that sort of adjoining boundary with the adjoining masonette. But given the extent of impact that will be minimised because of the orientation, I'm not sure I feel comfortable with a refusal of this proposal. I have foreshadowed that as well with the administration today. Obviously willing to hear, very happy to hear the views of the other panel members, but I did, in the event that the panel determined to go with an alternative recommendation, I did ask for one to be prepared. So if it goes that way, I also, in the context of this locality, which is fairly closely built up, there are existing walls on boundaries. There are a number of features about this locality which are probably unique to it that perhaps don't necessarily reflect the character area. I forget the name of it, but there's the North Adelaide character area, which talks about big landscape areas and those sorts of things. I think some of these impacts around overlooking can probably be dealt with quite effectively as well. So I will foreshadow that I'm actually not sure this warrants a refusal based on it being a variation and sort of examining some of the policies that apply. I'm happy to talk to that a little bit more, but
Thanks for putting that forward, Emily. My normal approach, and certainly happy to be guided by other members, great for flagging that you've got an alternate. I'll hear out the views around the table, and then I'll ask if someone's prepared to move either the alternate or what's on the screen, and that gives us a chance to test what's been put forward. So I'll continue to go around the room, but Hank, before I do that, Edward has put his hand up, who probably has an answer to Mark Adcock's question. Edward, have you got that private open space number?
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member. Yes, I've double checked the private open space. It is the 38 square metres as quoted in the report for that space.
Brilliant. And well done, Deputy Lord Mayor, for reciting that to us earlier. Okay, who else wants to continue the discussion on this one?
Well, Nathan, my microphone's unmuted, so I'm happy to give some views. Look, at this stage, and unless convinced otherwise by subsequent discussion and other members, I will be supporting the recommendation. I think there are some substantial, yet subtle, but they are substantial changes from the approved plan. And I think they have the most impact on the property to the north. By virtue of the fact that the extension is now complete from a height perspective across that boundary, which I think it does impact on the southern property as well, but it really is now going to create a sense of enclosure, and I think there are some amenity impacts which we could which weren't as decisive previously. They were certainly important. I'm not taking away from the representative's concerns, but I think previously I felt that they could be excused for other positive aspects of the proposal, and I do commend the design. I think the design of itself is very good, and the design in respect to the preservation of the local heritage place is very good. But I think there are other matters here which now bring other principles really to the focus. Most of those are mentioned in the report, probably one or two that you could add to that, particularly from the local heritage place overlay. But I think the height and the length and the imposition of that boundary wall has, for me, tips the application into the negative. Previously, to a degree, the addition could almost be read as a outbuilding from adjoining properties with some space between it and the primary residence, whereas now it just presents a solid built form. So that's sort of in a nutshell where I'm sitting.
Thank you, Mark. Good clarity. What about Colleen or Deputy Lord Mayor? Colleen, your microphone's on.
Yep. Okay. I might just say that when we last saw this application, I voted for refusal. And I appreciate that the applicant is very keen to remain in this house. And the issue is that it's really just too small in terms of building area and site area to accommodate their family. But I also appreciate that in the last 18 months, they're really between a rock and a hard place, because there really is no way out of this. They need to stay with this and work with it. In addition to supporting the reasons for refusal for the last application, I also had some technical issues with poor design elements. And I'm pleased that these have been resolved significantly, and there's a much more effective use of space in this design before us. So I commend the applicant and the designer for that. However, I still have issues. There remains very little use of the valuable northern exposure. I think the light well is good and useful, but I think better use could be made of that. Reliance on internal shading only for the full height west-facing bedroom window is poor. And the form and the bulk of the northern elevation, now that it has two-storey element, the full length of the property, I think is unfavourable, and it could be treated in a more respectful way to the neighbour without any loss of area. But I'm a little bit conflicted by this, because while I didn't support the previous application, it's still current and it still has approval. And so I'm conflicted that if we refuse this one, which is in most respects better than the previous one, that the applicant will be stuck with the other one. So I don't have a decision quite yet. We'll see what Oman has to offer.
No problems. Moving on to you then, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I don't envy the staff for assessing such applications, because it is a balancing act and a fine balancing act. I do want to acknowledge the representatives and the feedback that they have provided in tonight's meeting. And I do agree with Colleen in terms of the precedent already being set, in terms of us having an approval in place. Whilst I note that there are certain shortfalls in certain aspects of this whole development, I do want to, I guess, emphasize on the fact that we need to look beyond individual aspects. So there may be some stuff where there may be shortfalls, but then there are others that are that they've gone above and beyond the minimum requirements. Soft landscaping is one where they haven't met the minimum requirements, but then the private open space is one where they have gone above and beyond. So that swings and roundabouts, ups and downs. But I think if we were to assess this development in its entirety, in my opinion, it would warrant an approval, and I won't be supporting the recommendation that is before us.
Thank you. Before we circle back to Colleen, I'll put my points forward. I think a lot of good points have been made by members around the room. And I think Deputy Lord Mayor said it best, and that this is finely balanced. And I don't like to use that term because I find it's overused by panels and it's overused by planners. But there is a lot to like about this one. The members who have seen the previous approval and can compare it to this have also pointed out a number of positive changes. I must admit I'm leaning towards the staff recommendation. I'll just put that out there, in that the change to put the 6.65 metre high wall on the boundary, I think is significant. I think a number of really good points were made by the representatives. The overshadowing clarification was a good point that I hadn't really considered, in that the allotment isn't due north-south. And we all know exactly where the sun does come up at different times of year. So the shadowing is more of an issue than I probably had given weight to prior to the meeting on the northern allotment, because I guess in a normal sense, I don't consider overshadowing to be a great issue on the north. But with the slight 15 degrees, I think Ian said, running of the allotment, it does make a difference. I was somewhat, I guess, comforted by the local heritage advice, and also member Mark has put forward his thoughts on it's a very respectful addition to the local heritage place, and I think in a true design sense that's correct. Obviously subject to a couple of suggested conditions by the heritage advisor. That's not the issue. I just see the issue of essentially the bulk scale, height and impact on neighbours being something that I can't look past. So I found myself aligning with the staff's view on this one. But before I look for someone to move a position on this, because it looks like it will be tight, Colleen, have you found a place?
I believe I'm in the position where I support the recommendation for refusal, and I would be prepared to propose that.
What I might do, given that the alternate was flagged early, I'll give Emily the opportunity to put it on the table. Emily, are you prepared to move that alternate recommendation?
I am. I haven't seen it, but I am.
Is it something that we can get on screen, staff?
Thanks.
Emily, do you just want to talk us through, I know you haven't seen the specifics, but in requesting it, you've requested an approval for certain reasons and with certain conditions?
Yes, like I said, I haven't actually seen it. I would expect the conditions recommended by the local heritage advice to be imposed. I note that the applicants did actually, in their response to representation, said that they would be happy to have a condition regarding landscaping, and I thought that would be an appropriate condition to impose. Privacy treatments to upper level windows as well. They were the main ones. I can see that one in there.
So
yeah.
Now you've seen it, you're happy to move what's on screen?
Yeah, sorry, was there a landscaping condition in there? Did I miss it?
I'm not seeing a specific one.
I'm not seeing one either.
Other than the off-street tree canopy, or the tree canopy offset fund.
Yeah.
I think probably the staff will be working on something now.
Yeah, and sorry, thanks, Helen. I would expect it to be that something like a detailed landscape plan be provided
to the assessment manager.
I think that, yeah, look, I mean, in hearing the other views of the panel, this is balanced, and I grappled with it over the weekend after I read the agenda, grappled with it some more after I pulled out the old agenda because I didn't have the benefit of seeing the previous proposal at the meeting. I think look, I actually, when I read it, I did look at it like a new proposal, and I think I would have been willing to support it as a new proposal as well. And that's not to want to discount some of the concerns of the representatives, because I absolutely take those on board, and I do understand that there will be perhaps conditions arising out of a development like this which won't be ideal. But I do think there are some considerable improvements with this design to the last one. And this is an area where it's not uncommon. There's a reason that walls on boundaries were approved in the previous one. It's not an area where this is unheard of, or that it's not appropriate. I don't believe it will result in, you know, such significant detrimental outcomes that it's not appropriate. And when I read the provisions, and while I acknowledge that it probably doesn't align absolutely with some of the setback provisions, and they would be the only ones that I really feel have any weight in this assessment, I just fall to the side of I don't think this warrants refusal.
That's well, mate. Thank you. So we'll take that as moving. Just getting governance advice around the landscaping. Let's read up the screen just 1 second. Emily, you've spoken through the landscaping in terms of your expectations of what the language will say. I don't feel a need to wait to see that on screen necessarily. I think there's enough clarity. Are you okay to continue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that is then moved. Do we have a seconder for that motion subject to the additional landscaping words, which will be fine-tuned?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to second.
No problem. So we've got the alternate recommendation for approval on the floor. That gives me an opportunity to put that to a vote. So all those in favour of the alternate recommendation, please raise your hands. And all opposed? We have 2 in favour, 3 opposed. So that is lost. We'll then need somebody to move either what's published in the agenda papers or another variation of. Colleen.
Nathan, I'll propose the recommendation for refusal as in the agenda.
As printed in the agenda and now as on screen, as on the shared screen. Okay, thanks, Colleen. Do we have a seconder for that? Mark, see your hand. Thank you. We have a seconder, so I'll put that to a vote now. All those in favour of that recommendation? And all opposed? 2 opposed. Therefore, that is carried. Okay, so for the benefit of everybody observing within the meeting and within the online environment, it was close. The language of finely balanced was used by at least 3 of us, I think, not to overstate it, but obviously there's a lot to like about the proposal, but there are a number of impacts that the majority couldn't get passed. So that has been refused. If any representatives or the applicant had any questions about their options and where to from here, they're best directed to Edward and Helen and their team as of tomorrow. So thanks for your respectful participation in the proceedings tonight. And by all means, you guys can jump off the Zoom meeting from now. So thank you. And we'll continue as a panel to move on. Item 6 of the agenda is applications under the Development Act with no representations. We have none of those. Item 7 is applications under the PDI Act with no representations. We have none of those. And item 8 is other applications, which we have nil. Item 9, other business. We have none published under 9.1. Do any panel members have any other business that they wish to raise? I can see all of you on the screen. No, we have no other business to raise. So that'll be noted as nil. Next meeting from the schedule we approved earlier this evening will be Monday, the 28th of February. Item 10, exclusion of public or confidential matters. We have none of those, so there are no items listed under item 11, which brings me to item 12. So with the next meeting likely to occur on the 28th of February 2022, I take this opportunity to thank the panel, thank the staff. I think it's a pretty good start from all of us, and well done to staff for dealing with the complexity of a variation at this point in time. So thank you all, and I'll formally declare the meeting closed at 6:49 p.m.